In the whispers of Salem's forests, her name can still be heard. The one who created monsters from her own blood. In an era marked by persecution and fear, a lone woman, shrouded in secrets and shadows, began something that not even time itself could erase. Condemned as a witch, she did not die, she awakened. And as she rose from the ashes of injustice, she sealed a dark pact that gave birth to a cursed lineage, the Children of Salem, a vampiric clan born of pain, vengeance, and ancient magic. In this video, we will explore the mysteries behind the legend of this forgotten witch, uncover how her connection to the occult allowed for the creation of immortal beings like vampires, and why her legacy still echoes among both the living and the dead. We will dive into forbidden rituals, blood pacts, and stories buried by time, revealing secrets that defy even the most skeptical minds. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why this tale was never told in history books, and what truly dwells in the shadows of Salem to this day. Get ready to discover a narrative that blends reality and myth, where every detail is a piece of a dark puzzle that many would rather keep buried. Before darkness had a name, Salem was already fertile ground for fear and fanaticism. In the late 17th century, this small Puritan village was consumed by mass hysteria, where blind faith turned into a blade and the altar became a courtroom. It was in this setting that dozens of women were accused of witchcraft, tortured and executed in the name of a false spiritual purity. But among them all, there was one who never begged for forgiveness. She simply smiled upon hearing her sentence. Her real name was never officially recorded, but in whispered folklore, she is known only as Maeryn. Born from an ancestral lineage of European healers, she carried in her blood ancient secrets passed down from generation to generation. Upon arriving in the New World, Maeryn tried to hide her power. However, the eyes of Salem were always watching, and the spark of suspicion ignited when influential people began to fall ill and others to recover inexplicably. She healed, but she also cursed, and that was more than the village could tolerate. When she was captured, Maeryn did not resist. Her words before the judges echoed through those present. "You are not burning me, you are setting me free." Some swear that in that moment, the sky darkened, as if the world itself had held its breath. Her body was thrown into the flames, but her essence, according to legend, escaped, wrapped in smoke and shadow, carrying with it a thirst for vengeance. What no one knew was that Maeryn had performed, in the nights leading up to her capture, an ancient blood ritual, a forbidden invocation, long forgotten by modern grimoires. She wasn't seeking salvation, she was seeking continuity. And thus her essence was stitched into the earth, the moonlight, and the blood spilled, preparing the ground for the birth of something new, something that would walk among the living and feed on them. As the flames consumed Maeryn's physical body, something far older awakened beneath the roots of Salem. The rituals she had performed before her arrest weren't merely spells of protection, they were keys, opening gateways to forgotten forces, entities ravenous for offerings of pain and blood. On the night of her execution, a partial eclipse veiled the moon. Midwives in the village reported unnatural births. Animals howled at nothing. And in the heart of the forest, the ground trembled slightly, as if something was beginning to rise. Maeryn had promised her soul in exchange for continuity, but the ancient spirits gave her more than that. They offered her a new body, one forged in shadow and thirsty for blood. No longer human, not yet demon. What rose from the ashes was no specter. It was the first link in a new kind of creature, bearing both the hunger of the dead and the magic of the ancients. Her eyes glowed like embers in ruins, and her skin was cold as the untouched earth of a grave. This rebirth, however, came with a price. She could never create human offspring, only bring forth children through ritual, the bite, the blood, and the exchange of a final breath. And thus, the foundation of the clan was born. Every new member had to be chosen, prepared, and marked by Maeryn herself. The first to be chosen were broken souls, outcasts, orphans from the village who had mysteriously vanished. They did not return the same. Their eyes had lost all human light, and their presence altered the temperature of any place they stepped. The clan grew in silence, hidden among caves, forests, and veils of mist. Maeryn taught them to control their thirst, to manipulate the human mind, to walk among the living as moving shadows. With each generation, the Children of Salem grew more cunning, more discreet, and more dangerous. They did not strike out of need, they struck with purpose. It was the beginning of a lineage that did not simply survive, but planned in silence the fall of those who had once judged their creator. Unlike common vampires born of chance or cursed blood, the Children of Salem were conceived under the sign of ritualistic magic. Maeryn didn't merely offer her soul to the darkness, she deciphered the mechanisms of immortality as one would read ancient formulas, blending magic, death, and occult science. Her teachings were inscribed on human skin, stitched into hidden books known as the Codex Sangreal. Within them lay the principles of the dark alchemy that sustained the clan, turning flesh into eternity and blood into power. Each new member underwent an initiation process that went far beyond the bite. The body and spirit had to be prepared. Prolonged fasting, baths in water laced with diluted silver, the chanting of hymns in forgotten tongues. When they finally received the blood of Maeryn, or one of her direct descendants, something inside them broke. The soul was severed from the natural cycle of life and death. And in the void left behind, the echo of the Creator entered, an invisible thread that bound them all to her. This bond was not merely symbolic. Maeryn could sense her descendants from afar. She could guide them in dreams, call to them through thought, and even punish them with spiritual pain when they disobeyed. Many claimed her presence was a form of collective consciousness, like a primitive goddess inhabiting the essence of every clan member. This was why the Children of Salem rarely rebelled. Their love and fear of Maeryn were inseparable. The alchemy of immortality also demanded balance. Human blood kept them strong, but it was the blood of certain individuals, the sensitive, the psychic, descendants of hunters or witches, that granted them superior abilities. Visions, mind control, supernatural strength, and even short bursts of time manipulation. This selection was not random. It was a mystical harvest, meticulously guided by the teachings Maeryn left behind. And so, generation after generation, the clan refined itself, evolved, and became an invisible threat to humanity. The first to receive Maeryn's cursed gift were 7, chosen not for their strength, but for the scars of their souls. They were orphans, exiles, failed witches, and survivors of abuse, each marked by pain and silence. Maeryn found them in dreams, guiding their steps to the forest where she had been burned, and there she performed the ritual of transformation. When they awakened, they remembered nothing of who they had been before. They were now the keepers of the eternal night, the 7 chosen. Each was given a new name, a role, and a special gift, as if they were living archetypes of dark magic. Lucian, the first blood, led the group and possessed the ability to sense fear in humans like a scent in the air. Selene, the silent night, could walk unseen by mortal eyes, becoming a living shadow. Thorn, the flesh guardian, had strength capable of splitting trees and crushing bones with his bare hands. A titan in service of the clan's protection. There was also Mirella, the dreaming voice who whispered thoughts and invaded sleeping minds, spying on enemies without ever moving her lips. Corvin, the eternal eye, could see past events by touching objects, becoming the living chronicler of the clan. Isadora, the Silver Serpent, mastered potions and poisons, preserving the alchemical secrets Maeryn had left behind. And finally, Elion, the bearer of the veil, the only one able to briefly walk between the worlds of the living and the dead, bringing messages from the ancestors. These 7 formed the inner circle of the clan, and were the only ones with direct permission to create new vampires, though always under Maeryn's mystical authorization. They were feared even among their own. It is said that when they gathered, time itself seemed to slow around them, and silence fell over the forest like a held breath. Each of them also guarded a piece of the ritual that could bring Maeryn back into physical form if she were ever lost, a hidden plan known only as the Return of the Mother. For decades, the Children of Salem lived on the margins of history, camouflaged among the dead, hidden beneath veils of normalcy. But no darkness remains untouched by light forever. Around the late 18th century, signs began to appear. Entire villages where no one aged, frequent disappearances in remote areas, and reports of dark-eyed creatures walking among the trees at night. Authorities dismissed the claims, but some old families knew exactly what they were witnessing and began to prepare. These families formed the Silent Inquisitors, direct descendants of witch hunters and exorcist monks who had preserved for generations the art of identifying and destroying supernatural beings. They used forgotten grimoires, enchanted relics, and even temporary alliances with other entities to trace Maeryn's bloodline. The discovery of the Codex Sangreal, one of the clan's lost books, was the spark that ignited a conflict that would change everything. From that moment on, the hunters had names, symbols, and ritual roots. For the first time in 2 centuries, the clan was vulnerable. The first clashes occurred in the remote forests of Massachusetts and the rocky hills of Vermont. The hunters struck during the day, using silver stakes, containment sigils, and purification formulas. The vampires retaliated with fury and precision. The ground was stained with ancient blood, and the whispers of the dying echoed for days among the pines. Both sides lost warriors, but the hunters soon realized that fighting the Children of Salem was to confront a force far beyond the physical. It was to enter a mental, spiritual, and eternal war. To contain the threat, the Inquisitors attempted something bold: to destroy the 7 chosen. They believed that by eliminating the clan's leadership, the entire structure would collapse. The attack nearly succeeded. 3 of the chosen were severely wounded, and one Elion, the bearer of the veil, was presumed dead. However, this mistake came at a cost. The clan activated an ancient protocol known as the Night of Inverted Blood, a ritualistic counterattack that cursed the hunter's blood, causing future generations to carry vampiric traits involuntarily. In other words, the very bloodline of the hunters was now at risk of becoming what they had sworn to destroy. Years after the Night of Inverted Blood, the Silent Inquisitors began to notice something strange in their newer generations. Some children were born with extreme sensitivity to light, others with early developing psychic abilities. But there was one in particular who inspired both fear and fascination from the moment she was born: Evelyn Marrow, a direct granddaughter of one of the most ruthless hunters of the Hidden War. With ashen gray eyes and an inexplicable magnetism, Evelyn grew up under study, in isolation, and, unbeknownst to her, under the watchful eye of the Children of Salem. At 17, she began to have strange dreams of a woman wrapped in fire and shadow, whispering words in a language no linguist could identify. Over time, Evelyn discovered she could hear the thoughts of anyone who touched her and move small objects without physical contact. The hunters attributed this to the influence of the curse, and some even considered eliminating her. But a smaller, wiser group saw her as a living key, a possible bridge between worlds. They didn't know whether Evelyn was a threat or a salvation. It was at this point that the Children of Salem drew near, not with violence, but with messages, visions, and brief appearances in the shadows. Maeryn, even without a physical body, began to appear to Evelyn as a spectral presence, guiding her steps. Confused by the two sides that now claimed her, Evelyn chose to seek the truth for herself. She traveled to the old execution sites in Salem, followed hidden trails in forgotten forests, and finally reached the entrance to Maeryn's crypt, a subterranean sanctuary concealed for centuries. There, she found fragments of the Codex Sangreal, records of the original ritual, and a black mirror that reflected not her appearance, but her blood. It was there that Evelyn discovered what she truly was, a hybrid, born of hunter's blood, yet touched by Maeryn's essence. Not fully human, not fully vampire. She carried the potential to either reverse the bloodline or amplify it to levels never before imagined. From that point on, her life was no longer just a thread in the tapestry of history. She became the breaking point itself, the center of a new era that had yet to begin. The discovery of her true nature changed everything for Evelyn. Bearing the marks of both worlds within her, she came to be known in ancient texts as the daughter of twilight, the one born at the threshold between light and darkness, day and night, death and eternity. To the Children of Salem, she was a living prophecy. Some believed she should lead a new, hybrid, and superior bloodline. Others, more traditionalist, saw her as a threat to the purity of the original curse. Meanwhile, the hunters, weakened and divided, feared Evelyn might become the greatest predator the world had ever known. Evelyn, for her part, saw herself neither as a savior nor a monster. She was a young woman marked by doubt, by solitude, and by a power she barely understood. Upon returning to Maeryn's crypt, she found one final page of the Codex Sangreal, containing a last ritual, the Bond of Rebirth, a ceremony that could, if completed, grant Maeryn a new body, using Evelyn as a vessel. The price? Evelyn's soul. The benefit? A stronger, more unified clan, eternally bound. Torn, Evelyn sought answers from both bloodlines. With the hunters, she learned the value of resistance and pain. With the vampires, she learned to see beyond human morality and to understand the balance between predator and prey. At the climax of her journey, Evelyn was brought to the altar of double blood, a natural stone formation where the clan's magic was strongest. There, before representatives of both sides, she made her choice. She would not be a vessel, but a bridge. With her own blood, she rewrote part of the ritual. She fused the vampire's genetic code with her own, purifying the curse without extinguishing it. The Children of Salem, who embraced the change, became day-walking shadows beings who could walk in sunlight, but who carried the darkness in their eyes. Those who rejected it vanished into the depths of shadow, sealed away by Evelyn with the very energy that had once created them. In doing so, she destroyed the clan as it was and gave birth to something entirely new. With the rewriting of the ritual and the transformation of the Children of Salem, Evelyn sealed not only an era, but also the echoes of the very origin of the clan. Maeryn, in her spectral form, vanished on the night the new blood was spilled. Some say she found rest. Others believe she merged with Evelyn's essence, becoming a silent presence in the unconscious mind of the new bloodline. The old clan, built upon rigid hierarchies, pacts of obedience, and a hunger for vengeance, gave way to something more ambiguous, more human, and at the same time, more dangerous. The day-walking shadows began to live on the fringes of modern society. Blended among humans, they adopted common names, held ordinary jobs, but never stopped hearing the call of ancestral blood. Their thirst, now controlled, no longer depended on the hunt. They fed on memories, intense emotions, the traumas of others, transforming into psychic predators as discreet as they were lethal. Their gatherings were rare, encoded in signs, dreams, or whispers in the wind. Evelyn, in turn, vanished from official history, but is mentioned in occult manuscripts as the Sleeping Queen. What remained of the ancient hunters also changed. The Marrow bloodline laid down its weapons, but preserved its records. Some descendants now live as scholars of the occult, unaware that the blood running through their veins carries both the blessing of light and the mark of night. And as time moves forward, rumors spread through esoteric circles of children born with ashen gray eyes, who speak ancient tongues in their sleep, and who can sense lies with a single touch. Evelyn's shadow still lingers an echo that doesn't die. It merely changes form. Today, walking through Salem, it is still possible to feel a presence in the woods. Some trails vanish overnight. The air shifts suddenly on certain evenings. And in forgotten taverns, stories are whispered. Stories of a woman who tamed monsters and became legend, of a clan that never died, only evolved. The cycle of the Children of Salem hasn't ended. It has merely fallen asleep. And like all that sleeps, it will one day awaken. Now you know, not every curse ends in destruction. Sometimes it becomes a legacy. And maybe the eyes watching you in the dark don't belong to fear, but to what Maeryn began. Would you dare to follow the whispers of the Salem forest?